list, and the village is aware of those, including the Hawk Estate.
Who else is here right now?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Village Dobbs Ferry on Thursday evening, February 7, 2019. Still sounds funny to say. Before we go further, I would like to welcome Laura Haupt, our new member approved by the Board of Trustees at their last meeting or the one previous.
Last
And
meeting, thank you.
We're delighted to have you with us. Laura's a
Thank you.
longtime resident of Dobbs Ferry, and interestingly, has two professions. One is a practicing architect, and second is the owner of a dog and cat salon, I don't know what.
Pet store
It's a pet store.
in Terrytown.
So,
Barking me out.
so, we've never had a pet store owner on the board, so this is, architects are, that's easy, but.
Well, you get the
So.
perspective of the retail end of it, and then also the architectural professional end of it.
Good. Well,
Yeah.
we're delighted to have you here.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
The first item on our agenda this evening, no, first I would take a motion to open the meeting. We do that? No.
Yeah,
We did that, okay, we did that.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Right.
Aye.
First item is to adopt the minutes. We do not have minutes in front of us, so we will do that at our next meeting. The second item on the agenda, I'd like to move to item number 311 Overlook. Is there someone here to? Great.
Hi, my name is Matthew Kruger, owner of Luzern Road.
The mic. Is that turned on?
Yeah, so the case is I want to build a retaining wall to prevent my slope and my house sliding down a hill. The yard has eroded away in the last, 60 years since the house has been built. There was no effort to retain the slope when the house was built. Unlike my neighbors, who have all retaining walls or prioritized and whatnot. So now, I'm before you guys, hoping I can get a wall in there and yard fixed. What would you like to see?
What do you have?
Is your downhill neighbor okay with this?
Yes, they were here actually at the zoning board for the variance, and, yeah, they're happy to have it done. So essentially what the
Good.
problem is this is 11 Overlook, nice 1960s construction. Essentially, we have an old retaining wall that's leaning, about to fall over into my neighbor's deck. That's his deck right there. You can see that there's an old chain link fence on
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, the concern at the ZBA by the neighbors and the board, and I told them that would be dealt with here, was the landscaping for the lower side of the retaining wall to soften the appearance of the wall itself and also to stabilize that soil on that downhill slope.
Thank you.
That's planted at the bottom of the wall?
Correct.
Yeah.
There's plenty of landscaping at the top of the wall, but there is none really at the bottom.
Yeah. Was that clear? His comments?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want the wall to be safe, and landscaping, the height and soften the impact of the wall is important to us as much as it is for our neighbors. And to prevent anybody just walking off the edge of the wall, sure. We're planning on, exploring natural shrubbery and whatnot. I have a 4-year-old, so I don't really want him doing something stupid. And, yeah, so this is the site plan, which you guys should have received.
So what we'd like you to do is add that to your site plan.
Right, so there is, I believe you guys should have, there is one that shows all the
Yeah, we have it here,
one that shows all the,
on top of the wall, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if you need something more. It shows, where we want to kind of put landscaping, at the top of the wall.
This doesn't even use streets. No, it's just gonna be the last one.
Yeah.
But, consulting engineers, there's a long list of stuff.
Yeah, some of the items are more complete with the drawings. I think you had mentioned the highlight, which was the landscaping, what the neighbor can see. If you look at that drawing that he mentioned at the front, favors, I think it favors his entrance. I'm not sure if you have anything in front of the wall that will be going. In the profile, you see the landscaping seems to be, like you said, on top of the wall, but there's nothing to screen the wall, so.
On the bottom.
On the bottom,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's some existing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Looking over your shoulder.
Landscaping and whatnot to soften the wall. Proportion that is level. The yard hasn't been touched in so long. We want to make sure. Yeah, we're happy to add it.
Right.
And then you're changing impervious area, you're increasing the imperviousness.
So here, you can see right here, this is the only part that I understand that the consulting engineer may have had an issue with, is that we wanted to add a little patio right now, which is dirt, and it has an overhang right there. And we wanted to add a little patio, so, in our old age, we can sit out front and watch the traffic go by.
So, yeah, if you could give us the difference between existing, it could be 10 square feet, 100 square feet, whatever it is. So
Yeah,
that
I mean, I think it's about 10 square feet. It's really small, and it's not necessary either. I mean, that's a holdup to, getting this past the board and through. It's, I didn't care much. It was
Were you furnished with the most recent memo from our
I
end?
did, yesterday,
Okay, good.
so, yeah, I mean, I have the 33 comments, like 17 of them, I think, were to beautify the site plan.
Yeah.
Use heavier line weight. Don't know what that.
So it's really just putting stuff on the plan.
A lot of things, yeah, you can't tell if you put the same line weight for everything, you can't tell what's existing, what's proposed, so that's a fair thing. But, we can talk through those items, that's easier, correct? Should be clear what's new and what's existing. So,
Right, so what's existing is right here. There's an old raised deck there.
yeah, but, when you should be putting the new stuff on top of the old so you can see, like,
Right.
the elevation change or the elevation differences and what and so forth, so you can see.
Okay.
You just jump, yeah, you can't tell if you got 2 feet of fill, 3 feet of fill. Superimpose one on the other, you see the differences.
So if it's clear, if you have other questions, you should contact the village to get clarified, so that next time when you come back, we can take action, hopefully.
Is there anything about these plans that is a showstopper? From the comments of the engineer, consulting engineer, he mentioned, on a steep slope analysis. I'm not sure if that's really required for such a property, private property, a wall that's,
That's actually a code requirement. Anytime you have slopes over 15%, you identify which ones are over 15% and how much square footage of each one you have. So if you're putting the wall on top of something that's steep, it's the portion. It's another graphic that you add to the, and I can speak to the architect about what to show. I know
that would be great.
Patty's done it
She's
several times.
obviously a little,
I wouldn't expect, although maybe it's going to get balmy, that you're going to be able to accomplish much in this, during the winter. So this is a good time to get this thing, get it set so we could take action at our next meeting, which will be March, so.
Yeah, I could echo that. I think, I don't see anything that's not addressable.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Right.
I think everything could be addressed.
Right. So,
This is
Good.
a public hearing though, or?
Just the landscaping at the base of the wall.
Yeah, we were continuing the public hearing tonight, so.
We didn't get any comments from anybody? No one else spoke on it, I guess? Did they realize it's an open public hearing?
Just looking at the audience, I don't think so.
The one person who commented at the ZBA was assured that we would address the landscaping at the base of the wall.
Okay, okay,
So that's what I want to make sure is there, or this is a no-go.
right. Yeah, fair enough.
So it needs to be added for next month.
And just to add on to that, the landscaping show, you should put a list of the what plants you're planning to put in, so that we can take a look at what their impact would be. Most of that benefits you, so we're interested what that looks like, but more than anything, to the rear, what might be visible to people behind you, where there's some trees now to identify what the plantings, what's gonna be saved of the trees, there's some that are noted to be taken down, and then some additional plantings are anticipated to go in. Unless the coverage there is, if you get a picture from the back and show that there's enough trees and stuff to block the view, maybe we don't need that, but right now we can't tell that.
yeah, okay. There are several existing trees there. We'll make sure that there's.
And call out the species and size and all that.
Well, exactly.
Data for us, including one planting for your
Right.
That's what he's talking about footings, but we
Okay.
make that work.
Good, thank you. We'll see you next month.
We'll close the public hearing then?
We'll continue the public.
Continuously.
Well,
5,000 cubic
it
yards
doesn't
of
really matter.
fill, as it brings this yard
We'll just
up.
continue.
This adds trees, it supports trees. You just need to put a road here to soften the wall.
Then, if someone's here for 52 Luzern, I'd like to do that next, please. Item number 5 on our agenda, 52 Luzern Road, pre-submission conference for proposed partial second floor addition.
So my name is Daniel Rodriguez. I'm the co-owner with my wife of the property, and this is the first time I'm doing it. Have you doing anything for the planning board? So I don't know what you want me to talk about. I think you have all the plans, so I don't have anything to show you on here.
Right.
Basically, you want me to like tell you what the idea of the project is?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it's a colonial house built in the 1930s. We lived there with our two sons who are 7 and 5. We've been here for 5 years, very happy here. Everything is, stayed here for quite a while. And we have 2 bedrooms on the second floor. And
I think that's great. It'd be great to have improvements of the housing stock here in Dobbs Ferry, and so that's terrific. I don't know.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm sure somebody else, I'm sure told you this already, but I had a funny time figuring out your location map on the first sheet, which is like in Hastings. There's some weird, yeah, it's a different place. That's easily fixed, but
Okay, because the architect has done these things,
that could be, we may have found the architect's address, and it's bold of him to put it on the site plan. That takes real
Location,
courage.
that's funny.
But so there's the rear yard, it's, if I understand correctly, the existing is non-conforming, right? Because or no, the existing is conforming, I guess. You need 25 feet, and you have 27.83, and you're gonna be within that same number. So in terms of all the setbacks and so on, you're fully conforming, you think, to the existing zoning. Is that right? Or your architect would?
I'm not an architect,
Okay.
I mean, so we're not making the house bigger, we just, it's like it's not bigger, it's just.
Right, the footprint isn't bigger.
The footprint.
Right, so the only other thing would be the sky exposure plane analysis, which I don't see here, and maybe it's a complete non-issue.
Let's see if
I
they
don't
can-
know, or maybe one of those places, I don't have a good sense of the context, I don't know if it's one of those places where it's impossible.
I don't think he's going to have a problem with it, but he is going to have to provide that for the AHRB.
Right.
What you do have to provide for this board is a full-page site plan. This one's the size of 2 postage stamps, I believe, so I can't read it. So the site plan right here, underneath your location map. So you need that blown up on the full page. So
And-
that'll show our setbacks to the existing footprint.
And then there are a series of diagrams that the architect should do that show a kind of envelope that massing is supposed to live within. So,
I suspect if you say
Probably.
sky exposure plane Dobbs Ferry, your architect will.
We could give you
We'll
a
send you
sketch
a
of
bill.
how to do it at the building department counter.
Okay, and then I'll bring that back next month, or?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
otherwise, it looks fun, I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like a nice,
yeah.
modest
Yeah.
improvement to the house.
I move that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So we look forward to seeing you next month, and we'll get this ready before, so by spring, you can start the work.
Great, thank you.
Or maybe even March. Next,
Spring was last week.
I'd like to go to item number 4, Florence Avenue.
I don't have anything for the board, but we've drawings, and we've got boards here for you to take a look at it. You've seen this before, we came before you a while back, you got site plan approval before this, our client, after we got the site plan approval, decided that they wanted to close the deck or the porch that we had proposed on the second floor.
Right.
So nothing actually changes in a massive sense, because the issue was with those 2 walls. We did make a modification to the stairs coming up the side so that you'd be able to get to the deck and get in the entrance. I think it's fairly straightforward unless you guys have questions. We've already been to the AHRB, and we've already approved it subject to your decision.
Okay, they have approved it. Okay. I don't know, from your point of view, George, is there anything that we should be focusing on here?
No, as mentioned by the applicant, this is a structure built over, it's already existing, so there's no impact to impervious, the drainage isn't impacted, the wetland landscaping before
we approved the bulk of
Yes,
this
correct. Correct,
last time, so this is just,
yes. Up
A tweak.
minor modification.
Tweak.
to what was presented.
well, fortunately, there's not a lawyer here, but I think I could entertain a motion to waive anything.
We did put a resolution for you to, I think essentially the public hearing that was held before covered all the issues related to the site.
Yeah.
So this enclosure of the deck doesn't raise other issues that would require a public hearing. So we just prepared a resolution to carry forward for approval at the meeting before, which was July 27th, 2018, and then add on the one site plan
Yeah.
change that he's talked
Yeah,
about.
I found it. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. If that being the case, I would propose the following motion. Village of Dobbs Ferry Planning Board Resolution granting site plan approval for construction of an addition to an existing two-story house together with related site work at 4 Florence Avenue. Whereas Diane and Perry Cocozo, owners, excuse me, have applied for site plan approval to modify a site plan previously approved on August 2, 2018 by enclosing a covered porch at 4 Florence Avenue and denoted on the tax assessment maps as section block and lot and located in the MDR1 zoning district, whereas the following plans and documents were submitted, lists the site plan and a letter. Whereas the planning board is familiar with the site and surrounding area and the proposed improvement plans, and at their meeting of July 12, 2018, held a duly noticed public hearing and all comments were considered, whereas the proposed improvement to this single-family house property is a type 2 action under the State Environmental Review Act and is therefore exempt from further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry hereby grants site plan approval for the subject application conditioned on the following. 1, all applicable provisions of the village, county, and state regulations shall be met. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, all required site plan and engineering review fees shall be paid, and all items in the village consulting engineer's memo dated July 27, 2018 shall be addressed to his satisfaction. The following language shall be added to the plan, approved subject to all requirements and conditions of resolutions dated July 27, 2018, and February 7, 2019 of the Planning Board of the Village of Dobbs Ferry. Any change, erasure, modification, revision of this plan absent reapproval by the Planning Board shall void this approval. Be it further resolved that this resolution shall have an effective date of February 7, 2019. I would make the motion. Is there a second? Second, all in favor? Thank you. Bye. The last item on our agenda is 100 Main Street, continuation of public hearing for referral to, from the Board of Trustees for site plan approval for a proposed addition and renovations. I would move that we open the public hearing. Second, all in favor? Aye, thank you.
Good evening, Pat Steinschneider from the Dobbs Design Community Development, here representing Lena Sutton, who is the owner of 100 Main Street. At the December meeting, we had submitted some drawings for the December meeting, which were oriented towards the changes that we needed to make to be able to accommodate the modifications that we made to the code, including a setback to the aqueduct, height restrictions, similar. That application still, that design still is pending. But at the December meeting, we talked about taking time out and looking at what was viable to this option to be viable. Actions that this board would have to be making as recommendations to the Board of Trustees, such as the 10-foot setback to the aqueduct. Even though this building is existing, would be a change of use, we need to either get a variance or a waiver. A lot of other issues of that kind of nature, most of which it sounds like there would be the support for us being allowed to do so if this could be viable. What we've been wrestling with for the last month is how viable it is to do this economically. And basically what we've come up with is that the only way we'd be able to make this work would be if we were to do an addition on the front building as well. So I can cut the whole report together for you and submit it so you see the economic ramifications of the different things. It doesn't mean that this is not possible to do. This is definitely possible to do, this kind of a renovation. It's just the amount of expense you're getting for the value you're adding, I don't know if it really makes it work. So these are just the plans that were done back then. This was showing, this is 2008, this was showing the fourth floor addition over the top of the entire building.
This is all,
This was all from 2008, but I'm going to show you something that we put
no,
together.
but I'm saying this is from Ed Weinstein, these,
Ed Weinstein.
this is all Ed Weinstein's work.
That's all his stuff right there. So we, at the last meeting, we identified the issues with restoring the existing barn, the variances, the special permits, everything that we would need to make that work. And it sounded like this board did not see any of them to be a hurdle that they wouldn't be willing to consider if we were able to make it work. We identified the economic concerns with restoring it, and some of these I don't think, I would love to believe that there'd be a possibility of tax credits on this. I really don't think that's gonna work. Steve has been helpful in giving us some background and information on that. I know they're moving ahead with the idea of the historic district, but we really have to go deep into this to see whether there are grants or anything else that would enable us to do that. So what we did is we looked at 3 different alternatives. One is to renovate the barn to serve as 1 or 2 residential units with no additional development of the site. We don't think this one is economically viable, probably even with grants and tax. The existing building is relatively modest for the site. We realize it's only got 2 residential units with the retail space, so the owner wanting to improve his property is something that the code permits him to do. He should be allowed to do it. The other concern I have with just doing the barn is if we have that structure remaining where it is now, we really can't have, and I'm trying to phrase this properly, it precludes compliant parking on the site. There'd be possibility of having parking on the site like there is now, but it doesn't meet the requirements that we have in the village. We could renovate the barn to serve as 2 residential units and add residential units to the front building, which would give us a total of 6, but that also precludes compliant parking on the site. And one of the things that's come pretty strong in previous meetings is the concern with parking. I know the sentiment, I support it, the parking should not be driving this, but at the same time, I think it's an issue of concern. And what I'll put on the table is the experience that we've had recently with projects where units didn't have necessarily work for everybody as a residential floor. Some of the other issues of renovating that for those kinds of uses is the building doesn't really have a foundation at this point. It would meet for residential use or like a retail space, but it would be, I don't think, and I do need to we just worked on this actually today, the idea of converting it to a garage, I think the requirements of what we'd have to do structurally for the base of the building is much less of a step, a lower hurdle. So I think of all the different options, putting additional units onto the front building, keeping the garage in its, as a truly restoration of that garage, is probably the one that economically is gonna make the most sense. Now, I've had a couple of meetings.
Which is
with
number
representatives-
3. So,
Number 3.
so in number 3, are you also adding the fourth floor
Yes.
to the, okay,
So we're adding, and I'll show that in a second.
okay.
I've met with the representative from the owner. You know, they're interested in seeing the numbers. I'm trying to do a little sleight of hand with the numbers, with the idea that our zoning ordinances do not guarantee us the highest return we can get. It guarantees us a reasonable return. So what we originally proposed would give us a total of 7,326 square feet. If you put a number on that, say $600 a square foot, it's got a really nice value. The existing building is $2,990. The existing garage is $1,152. So we would be adding, with the design that we showed in December, you know, the addition on the back and front building is law compliant. That would be adding 4,336 square feet to the building. If we go the addition to the front building and the garage being in the barn, we're taking the 2,990 that's existing, we're adding 2,896, so we get a 5,886. It's not 7,326, but it's better than the 4,142 that exists. So thinking that that has, particularly since it gives the garages, I think that's going to proof out. I have to do the math on it, but you know, everything that we looked at today seemed to make good sense. So anyway, the way this would work, this is the existing building. There's a bump out here now, and there's a wall here, where we had to come 3 feet over from where that wall is for this to really work. But it's effectively about the same size as what that footprint is. This, though, is an open porch. This would become a closed area, and this would become a porch that was facing towards really what would feel more like a courtyard. These would be brick pavers. We could do, I have to really see what's below this, but hopefully we'd be able to do some planted trees here without encroaching on a 24-foot back duct coming out of the garage. So with this, we'd have the distance there for the space. We have, the garage is bigger than a required parking space, so there's no issue with that. And then what we would have is 4 duplex units. You'd have the ground floor, the terrace level entrance into 2 units. We would have part of the second floor, or really the 3rd floor from Main Street, would be the upper level of that apartment. Then you'd go up the stairs to the lower level of the upper duplexes, which would then, actually that's here, which would then be your top floor. So this, from this line to here is what we're projecting out the back, but we're also setting this back from the front of the building 15 feet. So you wouldn't have the Weinstein design that showed mass coming up. This would be setting back. We would like to do something that breaks it up a little bit, maybe one out in the middle. That would also enable us to have, say, a shed roof between the 2 deck areas, so that you wouldn't have people deciding to share everything less than this. So that's kind of how we laid this out. In terms of massing, looking at the section, here's the existing building, existing retaining wall that's there for the aqueduct. This is the space that would
I was just thinking the same thing, that it would seem like if there's some way that we can get a sense from the board
Yeah,
before you start putting a lot more time in.
I think that'd be great.
Not quite sure how we do that, but I can work on figuring
I
out.
think you could just refer him back to the Board of Trustees with a letter of your opinion and have them make an opinion and send it back here before we continue.
That'd be great. I mean, one thing, I mean, I might be a little gun shy on this, because we did have a project in town where this board unanimously recommended approval, the architecture review board unanimously recommended approval, we got the board of
We know, that's why we're sending it back to the Board of Trustees before you spend any more money.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
yeah.
None of this is meant to be the architecture of it, it's just really the massing of it, but I think it would be fairly easy to get this to work so that you didn't feel like this was looming on the front. And we basically brought it back to the center. There would be ways of breaking up that mass, and I think that could work fairly well. This is just a quick idea of, this would be the garage with two garage doors, two cars each side with a pedestrian door in the middle. That would give you the room to have a staircase that could go up to the attic above. You could have 4 storage areas that people who were living there
Right.
could use.
Two things. I just want to make sure I understand. In this scheme, the existing, you're sort of glomming onto the existing building, but the existing building stays. You're not tearing it down.
Existing, the whole idea here.
It's to sort of
is
glom
to-
onto it.
It's really
Okay.
is an addition on the front building. There would be need to renovate some of the stuff in the building, but we were careful, for example, that plan of the duplex
Mhm.
of this, that's actually where there's an existing bedroom and bathroom on the front, so the staircase already goes up there. So it all kind of fits to that. There'd be some renovation work, but you'd be keeping the front building. There might be, if you're changing the roof line, maybe some details change on that, but, that can all be involved.
The other thing that you've been very good about in previous submissions is you built these sort of SketchUp models. It would be,
Well, I got chastised for the sketch of mine. I was told that it's gotta be these.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll
Well,
do both.
Well, whatever's easier, but I'm just saying, personally, I found those useful. I wouldn't put a lot of architectural detail in, but I do think
Yeah.
it was nice to be able to move around and kind of see what the massing looked like relative to the other buildings.
Yeah.
And then my only other comment, although it's not, I'm stepping outside my lane, so to speak, is I have a feeling that that the garage doors, my guess is that, that there should be I know for now, I think you're just cutting and pasting in whatever Ed Weinstein
We
had.
just drew,
We should find like, I don't know if it's a big sliding thing or whatever, but my guess is somebody who knows something about these buildings would have an idea about what an appropriate garage-like door kind of thing. I'm sure it would be fine, I'm sure it would work, so.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
These are drawn specifically, these could be a pair of outswinging, they could be 4 panels that.
Or sliding on a big rail, whatever.
We also, I had to put something on the sheet, we also looked at this, as 4 individual garage doors, like we did with 10, which is nice, because then everybody's got their car, they don't run it
This
over
is
the
all
back.
conceptual.
Right.
The challenge with that is we're a little tight to then have the pedestrian door, but maybe, maybe we do some way of getting up to that on the outside or something.
Otherwise, I personally, I'm just speaking for myself, I find this direction to be very promising.
So then he's got
And I would support,
parking in that space between
personally,
the
we
two
can ask the
structures.
other board members feel, I support the idea of getting this to the BOT sooner rather than later,
That makes a lot of sense.
to make sure that, now to do this, are you compliant, in order to do this, now that you have the garage, are you completely compliant in terms of off-street
Parking space.
parking, or you still have to have?
Still, we do our parking requirement, and I'm gonna throw a little bit of a curve in a minute, because I know you and I agree on something else that I would like to bring up. With 4 two-bedroom units, our requirement is a total of 6 parking spaces. I'm concerned that when Ed looks at our 4 two-bedroom units, he's going to say, well, yeah, but you've got this really nice den, and then it becomes another bedroom, and then it's 3. So what I think we'd be looking for is 4 on-site parking spaces, and then 2 or 3 off-site parking spaces.
Okay.
Curbside.
So that should be, that'll be a part of, I think, as long as you can present that clearly to the Board of Trustees, because I'm sure that there's some people in the community who feel very strongly about there being any off-street parking. I personally don't feel that way, but, that will be an issue. So I think when you present this, you need to present it with that parking count. And otherwise, this is, for me personally, this is the most promising of the various things that I've seen. I don't know how the other,
Mr. President.
I'm gonna wait to see, how it goes. Again, it seems the issue with the BOT is the parking, so,
Yeah.
but what about from an architect, like in terms of an overall strategy of reusing the bar?
Well, I don't like the fourth story, but I like that it's set back, so,
Yeah.
I know, I have to see the,
Yeah.
it's like, the Oceana building. When you're standing on Palisades Avenue, it would be nice not to see that extra story, but you do, so.
Palisade Street.
Palisades Street. So,
It would be nice not to see the addition.
yeah, it would have been nice if it was set back some more, but, it is what it is, but,
Yeah.
so I'll be curious as to.
We actually, the design that we had at one point had it stepping back, but that was,
Steve, what do you think?
these boards didn't think so.
I think this is good. I think this,
This is a
it
direction.
comes, directionally, but actually, I think it comes as close as we're ever gonna get to allowing the owner to do something that makes sense for him, as well as retaining, in very important ways, the look that we have now. When you go up Elm, it'll look about the same. And whether we want those garage doors to look older or something, that's a simple thing, but, no, I think it's a terrific step in the right direction. Yeah.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I like it a lot more than I liked the earlier ones that seemed more, large for the lot. I am concerned about the fourth story. Actually, I agree a lot with Steve Brosnan, that, it would be great if you could make the economics work without the fourth story, just by pushing it back. I don't, breaking up the units differently.
Well,
Because
you
also the
need
parking makes me
additional
nervous too.
square footage to have the 4 units. So you've
Right.
got a building right now that's got 2990 of square footage in it. So you're gonna have a tough time getting, the whole intent of doing this, the owner doesn't live here.
Right,
We
right.
have people who are glad to be living in Dobbs Ferry and hoping to be able to remain to be one of them. The challenge here is we've got somebody who has the rights to the use of his property, to enhance the use of his property, or it's a property that's permitted to be expanded, it allows 80% site coverage, or 70% with this. We've got a lot of rules that give the village and boards, power and latitude, but when you really get, if this went further, it could just be a very messy thing. And our experience with those kinds of things is that they feel that the property owner has been deprived the opportunity to improve his property in a way that's compliant with zoning. They really don't say, well, yeah, but the village has the right to shut all that down. They actually don't. I know.
But the code does say that you're not automatically allowed to build a fourth story, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that,
No, no,
that's my
no.
And your
concern.
parking is required. You keep saying it's compliant, but it's never been
But
compliant.
this isn't compliant,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know why I wouldn't say it's not compliant.
Well, he doesn't have the parking, and he can't,
No, but,
it's not as of right.
no, but he has the right to take care of the parking in other ways.
Well, not the right, it can be.
That makes it
granted-
as
he
a
can,
right.
he can be granted that by
Yeah.
the boards.
Yeah, that's right. That's a legitimate
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
That's not like
No,
trying
that's
to get
true.
away with something. He doesn't need a variance. He only needs the board to agree.
Right.
Now, I think what would be, on the fourth story, I think what would be good to do, I really think that especially with a setback as significant as the one you're making, I think the fourth floor makes a lot of sense. But I think if you want to, do you have a sort of running elevation of the east side of Main Street that would show this in elevation relative to the various other
Yeah,
buildings?
I've got that, and I've also got Elm Street. So we'd be able to go
Because we'd be able to see whether or not it really is the tallest. I think what we're gonna see is that there are other buildings that are taller and so on. So but I think it would be good to see that,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to passing it on to the Board of Trustees to hear their opinion. You know, I think it is definitely a stronger proposal that I could see being more popular.
This is a public hearing.
It would be useful to
Yeah,
have.
and we have a new, member.
We won't, we won't.
But,
I'm not as familiar with this project, I apologize, but, I sat in on the last meeting and looking at these plans, I think this is a better solution.
Those are, this is the other one.
Oh.
So, yes, this is the one that we.
Well, I think,
She means the one you presented
I
tonight.
think your new proposal that you're presenting now, makes more sense. And I like the fact that, you're keeping the barn the way it is and not making it a residential space and kind of using the space now, the building now as, a place where you can add on to residential spaces and also keep, the same kind of look of what that street looks like, that facade of all the buildings that go there. So setting it back, may be an advantage, I don't know, I have to kind of look at it.
Well, setting it back is something that's actually in our vision plan and also in our downtown design guidelines. Those are recommendations that were made of, when you're doing a four-story building, the idea was you should try to set your top floor back. Sometimes it's been done, I mean, we did that at 66, it wasn't done at 78, so it's, I guess it's somewhat discretionary on the board.
But now it's in the code.
What was in the code was 78.
Yes, it was a suggestion. Now,
Sorry.
it says if they allow a fourth story,
Right.
you need to set it back.
Right.
It's code now.
Okay.
And I guess it also depends on how you treat that facade as far as the way it looks, you know?
Bright shiny mirrors.
No. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but that was my immediate reaction, no.
That's fine. I'd like, this is a public hearing, and if someone would like to comment on what we've heard tonight, that would be, of course, useful. There'll be other opportunities next month, and then at the Board of Trustees, if we take that path, so it's no requirement.
I mean, what would be the next step theoretically? That we would now refer this back to the BOT to look at?
I think what Ed was talking about is a kind of, but not what this is done here. It's this public hearing continues here, but it goes back to the Board of Trustees to get their input on this specific issue.
That's what I suggested.
I
I would
makes
like to get them on the 26th agenda of the BOT. The only question I have is, would you like to send a recommendation or an opinion as a group or individually? Because I'm sure they'll want to hear your ideas about why you're sending it back.
And actually, I think previous projects, you actually sometimes send somebody to the Board of Trustees to go through that. You've done that before in the past as well.
That could be a good backup, but I know they're better prepared if they have something ready to read before the meeting.
Right, we could try drafting a letter
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
account for whatever anxieties there are about the fourth floor, you know,
Yeah,
Right.
try to represent the honest
yeah, right.
feelings.
Yes. Yes, please.
Actually, Steve is,
You, oh, Steve got there first.
Steve Tilly, 22 Willow Street, Dobbs Ferry. It's probably obvious that option one would be great. The issues with a building that's, like Weinstein's building, and essentially the massing, which even though it's set back, a building that's as tall as it is wide, really skeptical as somebody that works with developers and, that the 4-unit thing in front pencils out. I think it's really the code issues, having tried to do this, a similar thing to an existing building in Mobile, Alabama recently. There are a lot of code issues about now bringing the whole building into compliance with unit separations, the fire stair, the means of egress, and the intrusion into the existing building, plus the new construction. There's a whole set of issues, and I know Patty's probably already, thinking about it, but it's just hard to believe that it pencils out. I mean, I think the benign use of the existing structure, yeah, you have to, the arches came from Mars, so they,
Right, that'd be something
Dubai
different.
arches, but,
I was
something.
challenged by somebody a while back, that, have you ever heard of an arch? You gotta throw an arch on it.
Right, yeah, I don't know, we know there's been an arch discussion along Main Street, but,
Yeah.
this would be, the line of buildings on that side of Main Street obviously comes along, and then this would pop up, at the corner. So, I just, right now, Patty was already saying this is not architecture, and it just, it doesn't, it's really, doesn't look promising to me, but.
What part of it doesn't look promising?
Just when you look at that volume and the, just the original building is really quite simple. It's prismatic, it's, gabled, it's a simple, simple volume with a little appendage. Now you're sort of getting, it's got a backpack, and it's.
You're talking about the front building?
Yeah, the front building. Yeah.
Okay. The garage is,
The barn is the barn.
the barn is the barn, that'll be
You know,
fine, except for the,
We have,
right.
probably a bigger cupola, something scale issues, but anyway, that's
Mhm.
neither here nor there.
Right.
And that's great, and the courtyard is great, there's a huge, Cultec, like one of the biggest Cultecs ever underneath that, parking area, by the way, it's huge. I watched it go in, it's gigantic, so that's something we gotta deal with back there, but that's okay. And the other issue is obviously the abiding issues that, maybe other people deal with episodically at different times, but there are 14 people in my office, and I deal with every day is parking. And it's about peak times, and it's about, at peak times, we're at capacity, which means 15% available. And there's a lot of searching that goes on, so we're pretty jealous about the on-street parking, any notion of assigning that to units. I know that in 50-plus units, developers, I work with one, at least 1.25. It's a marketing thing partly out here. And in less than that, they really want 2 cars per unit. And it actually, it has some real data behind it that the car use out here, it's hard to reduce the vehicle miles traveled by adding density in this kind of environment. So we have a parking problem. We can't get people to go down to the new lot. The new lot is basically empty. That should be free parking for a while to see if we can get people to park there for free.
or mostly for employees, maybe, of the
And
businesses.
see if we can get employees or even downtown,
I would say,
downtown business owners and employees
yeah, that would be my
to
first,
make the trek.
yeah.
And make it really cheap, free
It's-
or cheap.
It's hardly a trek.
Yeah,
It-
I mean, I think that's,
But psychologically, that's the problem. It's-
Yeah,
it's,
well-
right, for shoppers, but for the people that live, but for the people that work in the downtown,
Yeah,
right?
But I
They gotta
mean-
be able to walk from Broadway or from that lot.
Essentially, we really have a parking crunch, and so
Yeah.
I I have a different, day-to-day. I live and work downtown.
I understand, but
So, I think it will be an interesting discussion with the Board of Trustees. I always thought that the fourth-story, and I still believe the fourth-story was required, and now it is. But I also reject the notion that the outcome out of the land use process guarantees some level of return to an applicant. The land use process, if it's carried out, as Darius has said, repeatedly, if you're following the rules, you're following good planning, the outcome is the outcome. There's no real, everybody has a right to make an application, but there's no guaranteed square footage by comparison to some other theoretical square footage that you might apply. I reject that assertion, and I also actually don't think that this thing would be headed to litigation anyway at the end of the day. So that sort of threat shouldn't, I don't think anybody in the process should be.
Yeah, I don't think, I personally am not responding to any threat. I actually think this is better than leaving the site as is. That's my primary motivation.
Well, that's, obviously.
I mean, me, personally.
Yeah, that's obviously, yeah.
Just me.
No, but,
no, I would agree with that. I think, we've heard from so many people, and we've heard from a few people many times, the idea of the priority of saving this barn. I mean, that has been the driving thing.
yeah.
And for the first time, we have something that can do that.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that we ought to take advantage of that and see if we can move it forward in a way that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, you shouldn't do what, I'm just making the case that the attendant issues need to be, I would note the attendant issues and concerns in relaying the application.
Well, I would say we've looked at several, over a long period of time, at several other options here that were clearly, for you and for us, much less desirable in terms of the massing that would be involved in the change. Here we have one that visually is going to be pretty much status quo. So I think it's incumbent on us, from my point of view, to move this forward and see what the Board of Trustees thinks, and then go from there.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that process at all. But I just was noting concerns that I wanted to just publicly get on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's fine, that's fine. Mavis,
Thank you.
anything else you would?
Mavis King, Luzern Avenue. I have a little trouble visualizing the 4 stories in relation to the building next to it. I always have the feeling that with 66, the battle of having it moved back from the aqueduct, we got our 10 feet. But sometimes I felt that 66 is so imposing in the front. Was it a Pyrrhic victory in that we got it moved back? And we all remember the many, many, many discussions about that and the state being involved and so forth. Could someone just tell me, with these 4 stories, how high it's going to be in relation to the other buildings? And the drawing doesn't show me that.
Well, it's approximately 3 feet taller than the existing ridge.
It is. Oh, that's what I'm wanting to know.
We also,
Feel that-
I did ask Patty, and he said he would provide us with a kind of context elevation of a stretch
Yeah, that-
so that we could
So
see
when are we going to see that?
tomorrow.
Hopefully he's good.
Does anybody else feel that 66 is sort of overpowering when you walk down Main Street and good?
On Main Street or on
It
both
just,
sides?
Yeah, both
back
sides.
up when I go.
The aqueduct
Which one is 66?
66, 68 is the one we
That's the one
voted,
No,
you and I
oh.
voted against.
Giuliano's building.
With the big kind of glass window.
You even said to me once about,
Uh-oh. What did I say?
say it again.
The one with the pines?
You know, when we did get, we saved the 10 feet next to the aqueduct, which was our big goal, just as saving the barn has been our big goal this year. So I felt that we paid a penalty in having 66 so in your face on Main Street. And I was just
I
hoping that
totally agree with that. I think 4 townhouses on the aqueduct would have been wonderful. And then the whole thing would have been much smaller.
yeah, well,
It's a great
you know, and
design.
yet we couldn't allow that because of the retaining wall
Yeah.
on the aqueduct. We knew that that had to be, we had to have that 10 feet. And it was absurd to have 0 setback, and we all, how many years ago, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? And we all rejoiced at getting 10-foot setback. But as I say, it did seem to be like a Pyrrhic victory,
Okay.
and I'm hoping that this 4 stories won't give you that same in-your-face
No,
feel.
we won't.
My sense is that the setback will take care of that, but I think if Patty does this long elevation and he does some of this three-dimensional massing stuff, I think we'll be able to,
You'll see that.
we'll be able to get a sense of what it, we could even theoretically, I don't know how much of the rest of Main Street have you modeled at this point? Can you actually stand down the street and look sort of obliquely at this site as if you were a pedestrian and get some sense of?
I mean, I think we showed that before with the earlier scheme.
Yeah, we've got,
So I think, I'm hoping that I'm not the sketch up there. So,
Mhm.
I still drove.
But you have a lot of that context built
Yes.
in the model already.
Right.
yeah, so,
So, yeah, we'd always be looking to do that in context and show how it fits in with everything in the village.
probably better if you speak in the microphone. Thank you, Mavis.
Thank you, Mavis.
To me, it's,
It will be resolved somehow or other, at least clarified.
Can I add a couple of thoughts?
Yes,
I think we're a step away from sending this on to the Board of Trustees. And I do not want to waste Patty's time, but I think you need to be able to envision what the building would look like from, to some degree, from Main Street, which we can't see now. I don't understand what it would look like. I don't understand what would be done to the existing building, which facade on Main Street, which is not particularly attractive. So while, on the one hand, if Patty
It's
was gonna go ahead with converting the garage to two bedrooms, I can envision that. I think we have enough information that we could send that on and give it even a blessing, if some people felt that way, that could be done. This one, I think we need a bit, and I like the ideas that Patty's talking about. I can't envision what that building will look like from Main Street. And so now we send it on to the Board of Trustees. If we don't know what we think it looks like, I don't think it's
No, I
smart to
agree
send
with
it
that.
on.
I don't think.
I agree with that. We would ask for these other representations to be done.
And I
I
think the
agree.
reason for going to the Board of Trustees at this point is not for a decision, it's to ask them on those very specific issues.
Just conceptually.
Conceptually, would you rather have, no parking on the site and the barn as a residential component with the addition? Or is it better to have the 4 parking spaces on site? You know, so if we don't make the garage, we can't comply with standard parking requirements in Dobbs Ferry for any parking on the site. If you heard Steve, and I think Steve,
So
you know, I think that's.
You
real.
stand if you don't think that is financially feasible to convert the garage to the 2 units.
I think if I believe that this building,
Well, let me just finish.
Okay.
If I'm sitting on the Board of Trustees, and I'm not, I'm looking at a project which I can envision, because it's drawn to a certain level, and I could say, I like that. Therefore, I like the building, therefore, I may be deciding I don't care as much about the parking. We've saved the barn, we've got an adaptive reuse that's interesting, and that is a chief goal that maybe outweighs parking. We don't know what the Board of Trustees is. That one you could take, as far as I'm concerned, to the Board of Trustees and see, but you're not sure you want to do that, and see if they would then waive the parking. This one, I'm saying, is before, and it may be a better project, but I can't envision it.
Right.
I don't know what it looks
That's
like enough to
fair,
say, is that a good idea? And I think you bring it to the board at great risk, in that if they can't envision,
this is since 3 o'clock last night.
Okay, but
That was an
we,
epiphany.
what you should get, what I would recommend is that you get a recommendation, which can have caveats, because we're not 100% agreement on the board, about referring it to the Board of Trustees with some positives and some issues, and send it to them for direction regarding getting rid of the parking or whatever we're gonna do. But they should be able to see it, I mean, to envision.
The main thing we're asking them to reply on is the fourth story. That would be
Well, no, and the
is
parking.
one.
Excuse me.
Parking
And
and the
parking.
fourth story are the two big.
Can I make a suggestion that if you stand in front of readers and take a photograph, a snapshot of that, you know, towards your building, and then from the other side of the, you know, just down to the south, looking north, and just put a blip there, you know, and just estimate about where it is, I think that's really all you need, you know?
I think that.
And they have to build a whole SketchUp model or street.
But you know what, we want that, because when we do that, what we get is comments to the light, that this is a rendering and it's not measured, and of course it is, but when we do a SketchUp and it's actually to scale, and we can say, where do you want to
Okay.
look at it?
Okay,
It just means that we don't have.
if you can do that, that's
But
fine.
it is, but a photo simulation is very, also, I agree with you that it's not that hard. It's probably easier to do than SketchUps to take
No, it's actually, I've got, you know.
a photograph and then do a photo simulation of this in that same shot.
When we did that on this project, and we took photographs across the parking lot from readers, from down, and we showed this, we had one person in the village who kind of went to town on it and said, I think it's gonna be this much bigger, and all this is not an accurate representation. So I don't wanna risk that
Okay.
again. I'd rather have something that is,
Okay, fair enough.
either somebody else does the render, so it's like, you know, it's rendering is like the equivalent of, you know, an expert who basically comes in and says something that they have no, you know, dog in the fight. Or we just do something like a SketchUp where you really can look at it from different points. You can actually scale it, measure it, and say, well, what did you draw it at? And you click on it, it's 37 feet.
Okay.
You know? You don't agree?
No, I kind of agree with Dwight that you're, God forbid, I'm gonna help you improve. No, I'm just,
I just want to make sure.
that, I think you ought to really, because you're gonna have the same conversation at the Board of Trustees, which is, well, the four-story, but what does that four-story look like? You know, so it's, you know, like conceptually, it's in the code as something you could, you can't do it unless you get a special dispensation. The reason you get a special dispensation is it's really benign and this looks okay, and it has a minimal impact.
Exactly.
So you really have to,
You have to show.
I really think I think you're gonna do yourself a disservice to go to the Board of Trustees with this big of a goal, and then when you say, I agree with Dwight that, you know, this.
I disagree, and could I tell you why, Steve? Because today, if this were a new project in this zone, I would send it to the Board of Trustees for their opinion on what they would be willing to approve, and then they would send it to the planning board to work that out, work out the details. Right now, this has been back and forth in so many iterations and for so long that we're starting to go backwards, and we're not starting at the approving board. So that board has to give direction to the advisory boards.
That's a great way to do it, actually.
So
Say this is-
sending it back to the BOT is starting from the beginning and the approving board.
Yeah.
And then they could send it back to the planning board and say, okay, we're not gonna approve it if there's no parking, or we're not gonna approve a fourth floor, we're not gonna, so continue to work on this. We need to know what they want.
But I don't, but still, if we want the BOT to be this, because.
I'm not saying you should not give them an opinion, you should, you've
No,
looked at
but I
this for a
mean-
long time.
But doesn't it help if, to Steve, at least point and Dwight's, if, to the extent that
If the
they're
Board of
able to
Trustees-
get their heads around it.
Right.
Aren't they more likely?
I do agree, but let them ask for it. So if they want to see more renderings in the direction that they want it to go, then they can ask for it. It could stay at the Board of Trustees for, another month or two before they send it back here. But let's know that they are willing to approve a project before we keep going with it.
Okay, but I also get a little because I don't have any decision, but I would not show up at the Board of Trustees without at least a sketch up, a couple of photo representations.
Right, and if it's not enough for them, they could ask for more.
That's right, but I do think there is a minimum you want just to be able to communicate
I
what
would
you're
want
trying
it
to
to
do.
be,
Agreed.
the only place I don't wanna go is, until certain people have indicated that they're not opposing this, since they have a tremendous amount of influence on another board. I don't wanna go to that other board and start acting like we're trying to get this approved. I wanna get the answers of would you consider this if we do this, and then move in a linear way to get to that point. So I think that's a great way to do it. I think it gives the Board of Trustees the opportunity to voice their concerns. They've heard about this a lot. I get visits from them saying, when are you gonna get this built? So it's something that, it's a very interesting, conflicted issue in the village of Dodsburg. It would be a mistake to think that the Board of Trustees is opposed to this project. I've had enough conversations with,
I don't know.
with those people to know that they are looking for a recommendation of something that works. And I think we might be on to something that would be that compromise. It's smaller, it's less, and yet I think, and I'm not gonna say I disagree with Steve. I think Steve, understands this, but I also know that Steve is very effective in representing his clients in other municipalities and would be one who would say, well, for this to work, it has to be economically viable. So that's something real, and I think property owners, I've read this thing that we have, it's a really good document. It's, I don't think it's read very often these days, it's called the Constitution, but we do have the right of property. And zoning, if you go back all the way to Euclid, not the.
No, don't go back there, that's way too far.
Euclid, Ohio.
Do not go there.
I'm gonna get my rabbi to
Our government has a very clear understanding of what can be imposed on someone and what can't. You
No,
can't-
but you're entitled to some use of your property. You're not entitled to any particular,
But this was.
or the maximum use
The
of your
reason
property.
that this project has gotten kind of an interesting explosion of ideas in other places is because it's triggering another whole concept. We have a village that is in very big need of increased tax base. We have an area, a region that's very much in need of additional places for people to live. We have a downtown that is going to benefit from.
Shift your focus to Osborne. Take it away.
Yeah,
Go.
he's trying to get me to go, but
That's,
you know that's gonna be, I forget what it is, there's some kind of show that is, and I think it would be one. Because I don't think you can make Osborne work unless you start talking about increasing the number of units.
well,
I would just say that
There's space.
you run a risk going to it without a recommendation from the planning board. I think basically we've been working on this for
I'm trying to listen.
whatever, 2 years?
No,
5 years?
almost 5 years.
Anyway, we don't have a consensus about this, I don't think, ourselves. We don't know what it looks like or could make a recommendation. So you go to the Board of Trustees and they say, no four-story, and make the parking work. What I think you need to be able to do is to go with a project that has addressed issues in order, saving the barn, bringing a project forward that can be attractive from Main Street, can be looked at as something that actually is an enhancement from a facade that's not particularly nice now.
Right.
And that produces the extra units and things that we're supposed to be doing in terms of what the vision plan called for. And the sacrificial piece is the parking. So if you get 5 things and you have to give up the parking, when you go to the Board of Trustees, you have a higher chance of getting them to say, we'll do with less parking.
I agree.
But you have to have lined up those other ducks first.
Right, that's a good.
But also, as Rob made very clear, and he's very right on this, there's been a misperception, I think, in our village, that if you don't have all of your parking spaces on site, you're not in compliance with the code. And our code was very beautifully written to say, we are going to find multiple ways of solving that and not limit it to having the parking
The
on site.
body that decides that
Right, but
is the
nevertheless,
Board of Trustees.
what Dwight just laid out is exactly
You're not
the
as of
right
right.
sequence.
You're not as of right
Way to
without
build to
the
that
off-street.
I just got told I'm pretty much not as of right with anything,
Right.
so if nothing is as of right, why would I worry about one
So then what's the next step? Do you want to come back?
I wanna work on it, and I wanna see, I like the idea, I mean, does it need to be at the February 26th meeting? Probably not. If we're not there, then we're obviously able to come back to this board before we go to the board of trustees.
Is that what you're thinking, right? Maybe one more visit here?
I would think.
And we come to you.
See if we can
come
sell
here and
us.
Show you the SketchUp and
Yeah.
the photo stuff, and you guys say, oh, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Now let's go, I'm perfectly on board with that. What I don't want to do is get to where, because I don't think it'll ever happen, this board is 100% in agreement of what it should be. And then we're sending it to the board of trustees, and the board of trustees say, this isn't what we want.
Right.
Right. Well, I
Well,
don't,
we
hopefully it's not too big a burden to flesh out a little bit of what you showed here.
You know how fresh this idea is.
Right.
This wasn't even the one that got talked about at the one day ago. This really literally was.
Okay, so-
waking up in the morning and saying,
So-
if I don't put the units in the building,
Yeah.
in the garage, I put them over here, I get parking on the site, and my units are now more valuable.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're willing to do this extra round, one extra investment in this concept,
We quit.
I suggested turning it into a garage at the last meeting in
I
December.
think this is, I said, the one thing that Patty is persistent.
Patty, you remember I suggested turning it into a garage back in December? And you said, no. You forgot
Well, I
that?
think
You
you
forgot
said-
that?
I think that was the end of what you put to that. Turn the building into a garage and everybody's happy. It's like, yeah, but where do I get the economic benefit?
Motion to continue, Steve?
I'm sorry?
Motion to continue?
Continue the public hearing?
Yeah, we'll continue the public, I'd make a motion that we continue the public hearing at our next meeting. Second? All in favor? Thank you.
Could I ask,
No.
could I ask you, did you get a copy of the December minutes in your package?
No.
Okay, we'll continue that as well.
Yeah, you're right.
Item 1.
Sorry, you're right. Okay, we're adjourned.
okay?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?